What if I told you about a military genius whose battlefield record is the stuff of legend? A man who started as one of Islam's fiercest enemies, but would eventually be given a title by the Prophet Muhammad himself, the Sword of Allah. This is the story of Khalid ibn al-Walid. From fighting against the early Muslims to a profound conversion that led him to become one of the greatest commanders in history. His legacy is carved into the very foundations of the Islamic world. His tactics are still studied today, and his story of transformation is one for the ages.
What if I told you about a military genius whose battlefield record is the stuff of legend? A man who started as one of Islam's fiercest enemies, but would eventually be given the title by the Prophet Muhammad himself, the Sword of Allah. This is the story of Khalid ibn al-Walid. From fighting against the early Muslims to a profound conversion that led him to become one of the greatest commanders in history. His legacy is carved into the very foundations of the Islamic world. His tactics are still studied today, and his story of transformation is one for the ages. Before he was the Sword of Allah, he was the champion of the Quraysh. Born around 592 CE in Mecca, Khalid belonged to the Banu Makhzum, one of the most powerful and aristocratic clans of the Quraysh tribe, a clan known for its wealth, influence, and skill in war. His own father was a prominent leader in Mecca. This was the world that shaped Khalid, a world of privilege, honor, and the expectation of greatness. From a young age, he was trained in the arts of war. Horsemanship, swordsmanship, and strategy weren't just skills, they were his birthright. The Banu Makhzum weren't just leaders, they were dead set against the message of the Prophet Muhammad. They saw this new faith, Islam, as a direct threat to their power and traditions. Khalid's own cousin, Abu Jahl, was one of the bitterest enemies of Islam, so it was only natural that Khalid, a proud son of the Makhzum, would stand with his clan, using his incredible talents to fight against the Muslims.
He wasn't a passive opponent. Khalid was an active and brilliant military leader for the Quraysh, fighting in engagements like the Battle of Badr and the Battle of the Trench. But his tactical genius was put on full, devastating display at the Battle of Uhud in 625 CE. The Muslim forces had the upper hand and were on the brink of victory. But in the excitement, many of the Muslim archers, who the Prophet had placed on a hill to protect the army's flank, left their posts to gather the spoils of war. Khalid, leading the Quraysh cavalry, was watching, waiting. He saw the opening, the critical mistake that left the Muslim rear completely exposed. Without hesitating, he wheeled his horsemen around the hill and launched a sudden, ferocious attack from behind. The surprise was absolute, and chaos erupted in the Muslim ranks. An army that was moments from victory was now caught in a pincer. Khalid's charge single-handedly turned the tide, snatching a victory for the Quraysh and inflicting a painful wound on the Muslims. It was a brutal display of his tactical brilliance, cementing his reputation as a master strategist, even as an enemy of Islam. Yet despite his success and his standing, a strange feeling started to grow. Every battle fought against the Prophet left him with a sense of doubt. He later admitted, "I fought all those battles against Muhammad. Every time I felt that all my efforts were of no avail. I was certain that Muhammad would eventually be the winner." This inner conflict only deepened after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah in 628 CE, a peace agreement that paused the fighting. The truce gave him time to think. He found himself confused, considering leaving Mecca altogether, but no path felt right. He was adrift, searching for a purpose his old allegiances just couldn't provide anymore. The formidable opponent of Islam was standing on the edge of a transformation that would not only change his life, but alter the course of history.
So how does a man go from being one of Islam's fiercest adversaries to one of its greatest champions? It wasn't an overnight switch. For Khalid ibn al-Walid, it was a personal journey, marked by signs and a pull toward the truth that became impossible to ignore. His internal struggle had been brewing, but a letter from his brother, who had already embraced Islam, was the catalyst. In the letter, his brother told him that the Prophet Muhammad himself had asked about him. The Prophet had remarked, "A man of his caliber cannot remain ignorant of Islam. If he would use his intelligence and his experience for the Muslims, we would certainly give him precedence over others." This hit Khalid hard. The fact that the Prophet, a man he had fought with everything he had, recognized his potential and spoke of him with respect moved him deeply. His desire to embrace Islam grew stronger. Around this time, Khalid had a powerful dream where he saw himself walking out of a narrow, barren land into a vast, green, and beautiful one, a clear symbol of his journey from disbelief to the light of Islam. That was it. Khalid decided to travel to Medina to declare his faith. He first asked some of his peers to join him, but they refused. Finally, he found a willing companion in Uthman ibn Talha. On their way, they met another traveler with the same destination and purpose, Amr ibn al-As, another brilliant Qurayshi leader. The three men, once united against Islam, were now on the same road to submission. Their arrival in Medina around 629 CE was a huge deal. The Prophet himself greeted Khalid warmly, telling him that he had been hoping for this moment. Khalid stood before the Prophet and declared his faith. The first thing he asked for was forgiveness for all his past aggression against the Muslims. The Prophet assured him with one of the most beautiful tenets of his new faith: embracing Islam wipes the slate clean. It was a complete rebirth. With that, Khalid's transformation was complete. The man whose strategy had nearly crushed the Muslims at Uhud now pledged that same genius to the cause of Allah. The sword of the Quraysh was about to be reforged into the sword of Allah.
Khalid's conversion marked the beginning of an unparalleled military career in service to Islam. And it didn't take long for him to prove his worth. Just months after converting, he was thrown into one of the most dangerous battles the early Muslims had ever faced. In 629 CE, the Prophet sent 3,000 men to the northern frontier near Mutah in modern-day Jordan to confront a Byzantine Ghassanid Arab force. The Muslims were catastrophically outnumbered. While early sources give huge figures, modern historians believe the Byzantine force was still immense, possibly 10 times their size. The battle was brutal. One by one, the 3 appointed Muslim commanders were killed, and the army was left leaderless and on the brink of annihilation. In that moment of desperation, the surviving soldiers turned to Khalid. He took command. What Khalid did next was a masterclass in strategy and psychological warfare. He knew a straight-up fight was suicide. The goal wasn't victory, it was survival. For the rest of the day, he fought a fierce defensive action until nightfall. During the night, he devised a brilliant plan. He swapped the army's flanks, moved the vanguard to the rear, and had a small group of cavalry kick up dust behind a hill at dawn to create the illusion of massive reinforcements. The next morning, the Byzantines were confused. They saw different faces on the front lines and what looked like a fresh army arriving from Medina. Fearing a trap, they hesitated. Khalid used this moment not to attack, but to execute a slow, methodical, and strategic withdrawal. The Byzantines, thinking they were being lured into the desert, didn't pursue. Khalid had engineered an incredible retreat, saving the army from certain destruction. When he returned to Medina, some accused the army of fleeing, but the Prophet Muhammad defended them. It was after this incredible feat that the Prophet bestowed upon Khalid the title he would carry forever, Saif Allah, the Sword of Allah. After the Prophet's death in 332 CE, the young Islamic state faced a crisis. Many tribes renounced Islam in what became known as the Ridda Wars. The first caliph, Abu Bakr, was determined to reunite Arabia, and his trump card was Khalid ibn al-Walid. Khalid tore through Arabia with breathtaking speed. He defeated the false prophet Tulayha at the Battle of Buzaka. His greatest challenge came from another false prophet, Musaylima, who had amassed a huge army at Yamamah. The battle was so bloody, the Muslims were initially pushed back. But Khalid quickly reorganized his troops by clan, igniting their sense of honor. The fight culminated in a walled garden, later known as the Garden of Death, where Musaylima's rebellion was finally crushed. In just over a year, Khalid had pacified and reunited Arabia.
With Arabia secure, Abu Bakr turned to the 2 superpowers of the age, the Sasanian Persians and the Byzantine Romans. Khalid was first sent to Iraq in 633 CE, where he won a series of stunning victories using rapid maneuvers and surprise attacks. Then, in 634 CE, as the Muslim armies in Syria were struggling, Abu Bakr gave a daring order. Khalid was to take his army to the Syrian front. To get there in time, Khalid led his men on one of the most audacious marches in military history, a 5-day trek straight across the waterless Syrian desert, a route everyone thought was impassable. He arrived, took supreme command, and immediately began securing victories. Now, this is where the story takes a turn. After Abu Bakr's death, the new caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, made a decision that historians still debate. He relieved Khalid of supreme command. One of the main reasons cited was Umar's fear that the people were starting to attribute victories to Khalid instead of to Allah, and he wanted to remind them where true strength came from. Despite the dismissal, the new commander, Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, recognized Khalid's genius and deferred to him on all major military decisions.
The Byzantines weren't giving up Syria. Emperor Heraclius gathered a massive army to drive the Muslims out for good. The two forces met at the plains of Yarmouk in 636 CE. The Byzantine army vastly outnumbered the Muslims. For 6 days, one of the most decisive battles in world history raged. Khalid, acting as the de facto commander, was the architect of the Muslim strategy. He used his elite mobile cavalry to plug gaps, repel charges, and exploit every weakness. On the 6th and final day, Khalid unleashed a perfectly timed, all-out cavalry charge that shattered the Byzantine flank, causing a total rout and annihilating their army. Yarmouk wasn't just Khalid's greatest victory, it was one of the most consequential battles in world history. It broke Byzantine power in the region and opened the entire Levant to the Muslims.
The story of Khalid ibn al-Walid is an incredible testament to transformation, leadership, and faith. If you found his journey inspiring, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part of Khalid's story stands out to you the most? After the triumph at Yarmouk, Khalid continued to serve, but he was eventually dismissed from military service for good around 638 CE. He accepted the caliph's decision with the same quiet discipline he showed on the battlefield and retired from the life of warfare that had defined him. He spent his final years in Homs or Medina, a stark contrast to his whirlwind life. Khalid ibn al-Walid passed away in 642 CE, but the one thing he always wanted, to die a martyr on the battlefield, was denied him. He died in his bed, a fact that caused the old warrior incredible grief. In his final moments, he reportedly said with profound sadness, "I have fought in so many battles, seeking martyrdom. There is not a single spot on my body that is free of a scar, and yet here I am, dying in my bed like a camel. May the eyes of cowards never sleep." At his death, his only possessions were his horse, his weapons, and a slave. Upon hearing the news, even Caliph Umar, the man who dismissed him, wept and acknowledged the immense loss. The legacy of Khalid ibn al-Walid is immense. His military record is the stuff of legend. While the figure of over 100 battles is a traditional one, it's undeniable that, as a Muslim commander, he was never decisively defeated. But his story is more than just a list of conquests. It's the story of a profound transformation, from one of Islam's fiercest enemies to its most dedicated defender. He was a genius on the battlefield, but after his conversion, he was also a man of humility, always aware that victory came from the will of Allah. The sword of Allah may have been laid to rest, but its impact on the world will never be forgotten.